Alright, Shalom, double honors to the apostles of GMS, honest you brothers that be pushing this truth in sincerity. I wanted to do a little news update on some of the things that are happening out there now. This is a rather different way of doing the video. Usually I have it up on screen, but I found out just today some of these articles that they have on the Financial Times here, that we got here, you can't actually access it online without having to pay a little bit, so I thought it might be necessary. I got into these articles. The only disadvantage is with this, there's a lot of flicking around. I don't get to go into different reference material, but at least once a week I might go into these broadsheet type newspapers, right? Title of this article here says Russia triples trust bank bailout as Moscow seeks New Year calm, man. Right, so if you watch the videos that I've been putting out there, man, you'll know, man, Moscow and Russia have been in some travail, really due to them Americans, because them Americans have been playing God, so to speak, on them them oil markets, right? So what they're saying is we're going to see in some of the further articles is that shale gas production within the U.S. is the cause of falling oil prices, which comes at a timely discovery of that comes at a timely fashion, man. Because how all of a sudden you got Russia's in financial trouble right after you've been sending for Russia, so to speak, after you've been having qualms with Russia. Suddenly Russia's in financial trouble because oil prices have suddenly gone down, man. And they're saying it's shale gas production. And when you go into these different articles, they're pretty much saying how the Saudi Arabian and Arabian nations can't take on the United States because of their cheap shale oil, so to speak. But if you look at the record of the Americans, man, and how they go and conduct their business, man, every time there's been a new producer of a new product or something like that, they can go up in there. Because they got the vast majority of the reserves, man. They can go up in there and shut that whole operation down. So how comes them Arab nations can't do that against them Americans? Right? Because they got the vast majority of the oil reserves, man. The US might be, I can't remember if it was, it's in the top 3, I believe. But it might not even be that. I'm just going off of memory. It might not even be on that. So you're telling me them Saudi nations can come together and suck it up? Right, suck up the pinch for a little while and drive them shale gas production out into the ground, man. You telling me they couldn't do that? Right, just bring the price of oil down themselves, right, to a level low, and that's how it really is in the real market, man. When a person opens a shop opposite you, right, and they're selling the product 50 pence cheaper than you, what do? You sell it for £1 less, man. So it's now 50 pence cheaper than theirs, man, and so on and so forth, But it's different. All of a sudden, it's different on these oil markets. But really, we know, right, by process of who benefits, namely the dollar increasing in value, namely the Russians suddenly, as we can read in this article, right, suddenly getting in trouble into financial burdens, man. We know it's them Americans that burden. So I'm gonna read a little bit of the article right here. You can see here, right. It says Russian tripled the size of its bailout of the troubled lender trust bank of 99 billion rubles, 1.9 billion US 1.9 1.9 billion US dollars yesterday, laying bare the growing financial fallout from its currency crisis and slump in the prices and the price of oil in its main export, right? And like I was saying, man, that was what's gonna happen. But right, you can hear, you see in the headlines here, man, right? They gotta, that's the financial troubles that you're seeing in other countries. Not Russia, not as big as Russia is, man. Not the power that Russia is. But like I was saying, man, right? Them Americans was gonna find a way to make sure the Russians will stop them in their tracks. But what's going to happen is because the scripture says it, man. The scripture says in Ezekiel, I believe it's in the off the top of my head, might be in the 37th chapter, man, how the Most High is going to put the hooks in Gog and Magog, man, right, which is them Russians, and pretty much have it to where they come up against the Assyrians, which is the Americans, man. When you go into the symbology used by the scriptures, so America is interchangeable with Babylon, it's Assyria, it's Egypt, Sodom, right? Because when the prophets were out there and they were prophesying these prophets, they knew that John the Baptist knew that Babylon had already been destroyed, man, right? Because he was a learnt man, just like how the men you see here at GMS are, they learnt man, right? And when we say Babylon is going to be destroyed, we're talking about America, man, right? And it's going to come as a result of all of what you're seeing here, right? When they're talking about manipulating the currency. You can see the graph here, right? Fall hard, right? And it's showing you January, right? January here. This is 2014, January to December, right? And you got the ruble against the dollar, right? And that's the red line you're seeing over here, man, right? And you get says Brent oil prices, right, which is going down out here. So you can see they're likening the correlation to the Russians finance turmoil and all of that. They're likening that with the oil prices. But like I said, man, who benefits tells you who instigated it, right? I'm gonna just read a little bit. Really, the point it's already been hit, right? With this particular article, it says, but I'm gonna read a little bit more. It says rapidly rising costs makes the rescue of the trust at bank, which founded as the ruble collapsed early last week, right? The second target ever seen, right? The second largest ever seen in Russia, right? And it says it has now consumed a tenth of the money earned earmarked by the government, right, last week for bank bailouts, man, right? So they're getting into real kind of trouble right here, right? Read down here in a little bit here. It says the last fare sent the ruble down 2.5%, but early evening trading yesterday to 5.9 a dollar, man. Right, the drop brought an end of a 5-day rally triggered by the moving by the government and the central bank, right, to offshore up the currency, including an order to state-owned exporter to sell some of their dollar revenues. Right, further support was provided by companies buying rubles in preparation for tax payments due to an end of the mark. It says Russia has been hit by Western sanctions imposed over its annexation of Crimea, right, and military involvement in eastern Ukraine, right? It says, and plummeting prices of oil, right, which has slumped by nearly 50% since mid-June, right? So you imagine you're losing your revenue. Your national GDP income is been reduced. It's been slashed by about 50%, man. That's a lot of money, man. Right? Moving on to the next bit. It says banks face plunging equity value, right? Rising bad loans and mounting burden of dollar-dominated debt, right? As the ruble weakens and looming recession, man. So you didn't hear about that like last week, man. You wasn't really hearing about that. It was like a rumor, man. But that's where you have it right now, man. They're gonna try, crush that ruble, right? In order to raise the value of the dollar one against the ruble, which is because they're at war right now, man. You just don't hear about it. But this is war we're talking about here. And the next article is gonna prove that, man. All right. So I must apologize. I ain't got the facilities right now to put the scriptures on the screen, right? But as you can see, man, we're in a state of war, man. Like you've been hearing, the brothers have been saying, the brothers at GMS have been saying for the longest, right? And it's going to happen between them Russians, man, right, and them Americans principally, right, and the Iranians are going to get involved, man. And here's the proof of that, right? And it says Putin doctrine stops short of calling U.S. and NATO enemies. And NATO enemies. So pretty much when he's been caught on record, right, pretty much almost saying them United States people and NATO, which constitute the beast that it talks about in Revelations, the 12th chapter. The dragon, rather more, it talks about in Revelations, the 12th chapter, and the beast that's spoken about in Revelations, and that's the so-called white man's power structure, right? And NATO and all of that, right? Of which, Vladimir Putin and all them Russians, they're all Edomites anyway, right? It says, but then, like, going back to what the scripture says, man, a house divided against itself how can it stand, right? So, getting into this article here. Right, it says President Vladimir Putin signed a new military doctrine yesterday that's designed that designates a regime change in neighboring countries and the undermining of domestic political stability as two dangers to Russia's security. So in essence, regime change influenced by the Americans, right? Regime change in neighboring countries and undermining of their own is undermining their political security, man. Their integrity in these different countries. Right? It says the new strategy, right, stops shortening of the explicitly describing NATO or the US as threats or enemies, which could have escalated tensions between Moscow and political and Western capitals. Right, it says, but the document provides an insight into how Putin sees the crisis in neighboring Ukraine as a threat to his own power grip, man. So he sees it as a viable threat, man. Right, it says, and it can be observed that military dangers and threats are moving into the information sphere and domestic sphere of Russia's federation. It says statement, and the first update of the country's military doctrine since 2010. It says Russian military has launched a review of its doctrine in the summer, right, to reflect changes in Russia's security environment as a result of Ukraine crisis. Right? It says sources familiar with the drafting process said officials had discussed naming either NATO or the US in the list of main military threats, man. Right, main military threats, man. That's a big thing, man. Right, to explicitly say, them countries that you've been persistently fighting against are actually now a military threat. And what you do to threat, you eliminate threats, man. So that's what's on the horizon out here. But you got people out here, right? That first and foremost, they don't really be reading papers like this, man. They ain't all up into broadsheets. These type of newspapers is too big for them, man. It's too big for them, man. Right? They be doing their Christmas shopping and all of that, which Christmas and all of that is all demonic, man. We're in the precipice, man. Really, we're in a World War III, man. You can see it here, man. Right? Like the scripture says, we're in rumors of war and it's tarrying, and sometimes it's going fast and sometimes it's going slow. But when you really read in between the lines, man, right? When you read in between the lines of all of this, man, you can see, man, tensions is persistently rising and all of that, man. Right? This thing is actually gonna go down, man. Right? But pretty much, man, really the point has been hit, but I'll read on a bit because like it says here at the top here, Putin pretty much calling them the US and NATO enemies. That's worth reading the whole article. Right? It says Moscow's military posturing in recent months has enforced analysts' expectations of such a change. It says, but a new doctrine only subtly adds to existing criticism of Washington and the Western military alliance. In what Russian analysts said was a reference to the US, it condemns acts contrary to the international law aimed against the sovereignty, right? It says political independence and territorial integrity of states, right, as a threat to international peace, right, security, and global and regional stability, man. And there's that word there, man, global and regional stability, man. you see if you can see that, because I'm kind of reading on the paper, but I don't know if I'm moving yeah, there we go, right at the top here. Right, don't know if I'm moving the camera with me. So here we go. They pretty much saying, man, America is a threat to the stability of the world, man. Right, it says in repeat criticism of NATO's activity close to Russia borders, right, that had appeared in several earlier versions of the doctrine. However, in a clear sign of Moscow misgiving over Ukraine, right, the doctrine warns of political upheaval, right, in neighboring states and political meddlings of foreign governments, right. It says the establishment in the state neighborings in the Russian Federation regime, especially through the overthrow of legitimate institutions, states, power, right, whose policies threaten the interests of the Russian Federation, is listed as a key danger, right. So when they roll up into these countries, right, and they overthrow, right, of legitimate institutions of state of power, right, they consider that a key danger, right. They go on to say a subversive activity of special service, right, and organizations of foreign states and their coalition, right, against the Russian Federation. It says the doctrine warns to let me see if you can see that again. It's right up here, right. It says the doctrine warns to attempt warns of attempts to undermine historical, spiritual, and patriotic traditions in defense of the fatherland, especially among young Russians. Right? It's also, for the first time, names foreign private military companies in areas adjacent to the borders of Russia Federations and its allies as a military danger, man. So when you have them, they see them Americans up in these different countries surrounding Russia as a military danger. Right, and like I was saying before, man, what you do to a military danger, man? You exterminate. It says the reference echoes claims leveled by Moscow that private U.S. secretary firms has been involved in fomenting the revolution in Ukraine, man. Right, going to show you, man. When we talk about agent provocateurs, man. Even these people out here in the Russian countries, they know that. Obviously, they know that, but they're bringing it out, right? In Ukraine, and have helped Kiev fight pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine. So the Americans have instigated upheaval up in Ukraine. That's what they're basically saying here, man. Right? It says Visa and MasterCard, the world's two largest credit and debit companies, said yesterday they could no longer support banks being used in Crimea following U.S. sanctions imposed this month. Right, reports in Reuters. So like I've lost my place marker here. I saw from here. It says. Yeah, there we go. It says U.S. registering of companies and prohibited from investigating in Crimea of providing services to firm operating there as a part of sanctions imposed over Russia's annexation of the peninsula. Right, so they're still using this Ukraine, the so-called Ukraine crisis, of which it wasn't really a crisis, man. It was just a little identity crisis that Ukraine done had. But really, when you read up, man, right, and this paragraph here, the pro-Russian separatists they were the ones that be rising up against the Russian governments, man. They were been set up by the Americans, man. Right. So that now you have the situation that you have now, because you know this man is the devil and he's going to do certain things to his own game, man. Right. Now that pretty much I'm gonna sign out, and hopefully Lord's willing that was edifying for your brothers out there. I recommend the broadsheets as always, but the broadsheets do make it difficult to bring out information because, like I said, man, some of these articles you have to pay for when you go online, and I suspect it might come to a situation where this video gets taken down because of that. But nevertheless, hopefully he'll hit who he has to hit. With that, I'm going to say double honors to the apostles of GMS, on the street brothers that be pushing this truth and sincerity. Shalom.